In this video, we're going to figure out how to find the slope of just 2 points without the actual graph and without the actual table. So we are going to view these as our XY points. So since we have 2 of these, we can go ahead and put these 2 points in a table like we've been doing in class. So my first point is 1, 7. My second point is 6, 17. I can go ahead and make it look like a table if I wanted to, or just forget about the lines. So from 7, so when we do our rise over run, or our change in y over our change in x, we're going to figure out how to go from the 7 to a 17. From 7 to 17, we had to add 10. And then we are trying to find our change in our x value. So we had to figure out from 1 to 6, what we needed to do, which would be adding 5. So when we actually write it as a slope, we'll write it in a fraction with our change in y on top and our change in x on the bottom of the fraction. This is your actual fraction or slope, and then we can reduce it down to make it 2 or 2 over 1. So whenever you have just 2 plain points, you can always write it in a table if you want to. I'm going to show you another option with this second example. So when I have 2 points like this, again, my foolproof way is always to put it in a table, or we know that we can take our y values. So if we have x and y, we can take our 2 y values and subtract them. So my 2 y values would be -3 and 6, and I would subtract them to find the difference between them. And then I can also take my x values. My x values will be on the bottom of the fraction. So I would take -4 and 8 and subtract those as well. I can write this as a fraction because I'm finding my change in y, which the pink numbers are my y numbers, and my change in x, and my orange numbers were my x values. And when I actually solve these, again, if I don't know my negatives and positives, I can always use a calculator. -3 minus 6 would be -9. -4 minus 8 is going to be a -12. So this -9 over -12 is going to be my slope. And I would count that right, but I need you to practice simplifying this down. So both of these numbers can be divided by 3. Since both of those numbers can be divided by 3, my answer will be -3 over -4. And to take it the next step further, a negative number divided by a negative number is actually going to equal a positive answer. So my slope is going to be 3/4. All right, for my last example, I'm going to show it both ways. So my first way is to set up the table. So I have an XY table. My first point is -6, 3. My second point is 4, -2. When I make this, I know that I'm trying to find the difference or how this 3 changes to a -2. And I would be subtracting 5. And then I can figure out how this -6 goes to a +4, and that is going to be adding 10. When I do my change in y over my change in x, I'm going to take my -5, it'll go on top, my +10 will go on the bottom, and when I simplify this down, it would be -1/2. My second step, or my second option of solving this, was to take my actual 2 points, So I would take my negative 6, 3, and 4, negative 2. And I can view them as my XY numbers. I can take my Y numbers and subtract them. So I would take 3 minus a negative 2. And then I can also take my X values and subtract them. Negative 6 minus 4. And I can go ahead and solve those out. 3 minus a negative 2 is a positive 5. Negative 6 minus 4 is going to be a negative 10. And I simplify this to also equal negative 1/2. So even though I had a negative 5 over 10 on this fraction, and then I had a positive 5 over negative 10 on this fraction, if I typed both of these fractions into my calculator, I would still get a negative 1/2 as my answer. So it doesn't matter if my negative number is on top of my fraction or if it's on the bottom of my fraction.